I've been in real estate for almost 6 years now. I've sold about 30 houses or so with solar panels, whether it's working with a buyer or working with a seller. And I personally think they're the worst investment you can make for your house. But that's my personal opinion based off of certain facts. And I'm going to go through those facts with you here. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the cost. Now, what I've done is I've come up with the average cost for solar panels on a 2,000 square foot house. So if your house is bigger, the numbers are going to be bigger. If your house is smaller, they're going to be smaller. But what I've determined is, and this is based off of solar.com, the average price for solar panels for a 2,000 square foot house is $29,118. Now, I know what you're saying, Dave, I get 30% back for tax credit. Now, I'm not a CPA, and this isn't tax advice, so don't take it that way. But let's just say that you could use all 30% because it's a credit. If you don't have anything to credit against, they don't pull that money, or they won't pull all of it. So let's just say you get 30%. That is $8,735.40. It's a lot of money, right? So that means your total cost would be $20,382. Now, that tax credit isn't money in your hand, so you're not getting a check for that $8,735. So when you finance the panels, you're still going to be financing, unless you make a down payment, the $29,118 in this situation. Now, I've looked at interest rates for solar panels, and right now they range from 7.49% to 8.99%. And of course, it's depending on who you use for solar panel financing and your credit score. So I've taken it down to a 10, 12, and 15 year financing period. So at 7.49% over 10 years, your monthly payment should be $345.48. At 12 years, $307.10. At 15 years, $269.76. Now, over a 12-month period, that 10 year financing would be $4,145.76. Now, if you multiply that by the 10 years, your total would be $41,457.60. So double what that taxed value would, or the value of it would be after that tax credit, and about a little less than half of what the total purchase price would have been. Now, if you look at the 15-year financing, because everybody wants to have the lower payment, so they finance it over a longer time, your 15-year payment of $269.76 for 12 months would be $3,237.12. Now you multiply that by 15 years, you're at $48,556.80 total for those solar panels. Now at the 8.99%, the 10-year period would be $368.70, and the 15-year period would be $295.16, and that 12-year period would be $331.21. Now, let's talk about that tax credit, right? Again, I'm not a CPA. You have to have a debt that credit comes off of. So if you don't have that debt, or you only have a $2,000 debt, then they're not going to take that $2,000 off of it, or they don't take anything off of it. So then we got to figure out what our break-even point is, because you don't want to buy something that the break-even point is astronomical. Okay, most people live in houses 5 to 7 years now. So if you're going to put solar on your house, you need to figure out how you're going to have a break-even point while you're still there. Okay, but let's look at it this way. Let's look at you're doing your electric bill is $400 a month. And let's say we're going to go with the 12-year option at the 7.49% interest rate, which is $307.10. So you take $400, that's what your current electric bill is, and let's just assume that the solar fairies bless your house and you have no utility charges for your electric. Okay, you're paying $307 for your solar panels for that premium. That means you're saving $93 a month on your electric bill. Now, If you take the $29,118, the cost of the solar panels for this scenario, and you divide that by the $93 a month that you're saving, your break even point would be 297 months. Now, I know that's a big number. Let's shrink it a little bit. Let's take those $297 months, divide that by 12 months. That comes out to 24.76 years would be your break even point. Solar panels, their typical lifespan maximum is about 20 years. So your break even point is 4.76 years after the manufacturer's usability period. That's probably not a good investment. Okay? But let's talk different, right? It's not just that, it's just numbers, right? Well, let's look at your carbon footprint. Everybody wants solar panels because it reduces your carbon footprint, right? Well, guess what? Solar panels have carbon footprints too. You have to mine the materials, so you're destroying the earth with that mining materials. You're using fossil fuels to mine that equipment. You're using fossil fuels to take that mined material to the factory. You're using fossil fuels to put those things together, right, to make those products. Then you're using fossil fuels to take all the different components of the solar panels to put them together. Then you're using fossil fuels to get those panels to the shipping port. You're using fossil fuels to bring those materials to the United States. You're using fossil fuels to bring those panels to your state. Fossil fuels to get it to the city. Fossil fuels to get it to your house. Fossil fuels to put it onto your house. On top of that, your solar panels produce a carbon footprint of their own when they're on your house. So they're not carbon neutral to begin with. Okay? Yes, they produce energy that kind of offsets that over time. And depending on what website you look at, that's a 3 to 5 year process before they even can produce enough energy to take care of that. Well, what happens when your solar panels are damaged from hail or they stop working? You got to recycle them. So fossil fuels to take it to the recycling plant, fossil fuels to recycle them, the components that can be recycled. Not everything can be recycled. So then that's build up stuff that's going to go into a landfill, right? Which is also affecting the carbon footprint and the environment together. So if you're thinking that solar panels are great for the environment, they probably aren't. If you look at a mining industry for these materials and what's left, and then you look at pipelines that transport fossil fuels, there's a complete difference. You can't even tell that pipeline. You probably drive over pipelines every day and you don't even know it. But that once you dig out all that mine, nobody puts that dirt back and pats it down and makes it like it never was there. So there's just a lot of different things to look at. Like I mentioned, the life cycle, 20 years. Okay? If you're going to be in a house for 5 years, then you're not even using the whole lifespan of the solar panels. Now, when you sell the house, some loans, they will let you transfer them to the buyer if the buyer wants to pay for that. Maybe the buyer doesn't care about solar panels because they look at what I'm looking at and they're like, oh, it's a bad investment. Then what? Then you're out a buyer, or you're going to have to pay off that loan to be able to get out of the house because you can't sell a house with a lien attached to it. So out of the 30 some odd houses I've sold with solar panels on it, I've had one person willing to assume the loan for the solar panels. Okay, so that's 1 in 30. What has happened is the buyer is like, I'm not paying for the solar panels. I didn't choose to put them on there. They did. That's their thing. It's no different than if they remodeled the bathroom or remodeled the kitchen or painted the house a different color. The seller opted to do that to their house. I'm not paying for it. So what happens is, because somebody's had their house with the solar panels for 2 or 3 years, they still owe $20-something thousand on their solar panels. That equity that you have in your house, yeah, guess what? It's going to be paying off those solar panels. So you're writing a check for 20 grand or so to pay off solar panels that you'll never ever use again. So this is why I think solar panels are the worst investment you can make on a house because you're never going to recoup that money. And basically, unless you live in that house forever, you're paying for solar panels for the buyer that's going to be buying it from you so they can have free electricity because you're going to be paying off that loan. Doesn't make much investment sense, does it? Now, let's say you live in that house. Most of the solar panel companies, when you need a new roof, they'll remove the panels for free one time, but you have to pay to put them back on. And if you live in an area that gets a lot of hail and you need to replace your roof or some damaged panels, then you're looking at added cost on top of that. So that's why I think solar panels are a bad investment for any homeowner. Now, I'm to caveat, I'm not against solar panels. They have their place. For example, I have a lot that is off grid, and when I go to build on it, I will be using solar panels as a secondary source, and I'll be using a wind turbine as a primary source. So I'm not against solar. I just think they're bad investments for homeowners. Business owners, maybe not, but homeowners, unless you're on an off grid lot, you have no real investment equity there to put solar panels on your house. So that's my thoughts. Let me know what you think. I'll put in the descriptions some of the sources I use to get this data so that you can see exactly know what your thoughts are on the solar. Um, I'm open to taking your thoughts on it. These solar people, the sales people, they're good. They got a good game. They talk a lot of stuff. They throw a bunch of different numbers on there. They're like car salesmen. Um, I have no skin in the game. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just trying to help you manage your money in ways that you can benefit from things. So, solar panels not it in my opinion. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a guy looking at numbers from a lens other than trying to make money from selling you something. So, let me know what you think.